everybody, I'm Angelee over here at Chenard's, popping in today to give you some pointers about pruning blueberries. I'm hoping to make it really easy for you to follow along, so buckle in and let's take a look at my container blueberries. One of the great things about blueberries is they're a long-term best friend. They can live to be up to 45, 50 years old with good care and management. The trick about them, though, is the best producing branches are on the 1-year-old growth of the plant. Because of this, they start to age out of productivity around 6 to 8 years old. So you want to keep up on your pruning every year to make sure that you have your most manageable, most productive branches left, and you get rid of the old, decaying dead wood that is no longer producing for you and keeping your plant healthy. So let me introduce our 2 blueberry models for our pruning video today. This one is a younger, less mature blueberry. I planted it last year after our bare root season, so about this time last year, meaning it's only about a 4 or 5 year old plant. This one, however, has been in its container for about 4 years, meaning it's close to a 10-year-old plant. Because of the difference in maturity, you're going to see a difference in how they grow, and this means we're going to be pruning them slightly different. As you're grabbing your tools for pruning, which I recommend a nice set of gloves and a nice set of pruners, I also recommend grabbing a rag with a light bleach water solution. You can use this to clean the blades of your pruners, not only every time after pruning, but between every set of plants. This will help prevent you from transmitting diseases and bacterial issues in between plants, helping them keep them happy, healthy, and clean. So as you're pruning your blueberry bush, you're going to want to frequently take a step back and think about the shape that you want to see, which is going to be a nice open vase shape. This will open up the center to allow light and air to penetrate the leaves and the center of the plant, helping it breathe and just produce more effectively. I know looking at this plant that can seem like a lot to really just prune it the way it needs to be. However, I'm going to break it down into 4 easy steps for you, and the first digestible piece is to just get rid of the dead, diseased, and damaged bits of your plant. They're not going to be producing for you, they're just going to be causing issues for you, so you got to get them out of there. Right here, focus on. You see all the new growth and this dead hunk right here. We're going to want to cut it close as we can. Here's another solid example. We've got 2 healthy bits growing off here and a dead punk in the middle. We're going to cut him out. We're just going to keep going. You can see these dead bits have no buds growing on them. The bark is brown and the inside is brown-black. There's no chlorophyll. There's no life left in them. So we just got to get them out of there. So the next step in this seemingly overwhelming process is to get rid of the non-productive branches or the branches that look like they're not going to be doing much for you in the upcoming year. These are going to be extremely tiny wispy branches without any buds, or branches that don't look like they're going to be able to support the weight of blueberries on them. So let's continue and see what that looks like. These are solid of tiny wispies. Yes, they have a really good bud set on them. No, they're not going to be able to support a berry cluster on there. And again, you're going to want to take a step back and really absorb the shape of it all, how you want it to go here. So now that we're getting along into our pruning process, now we want to think about potential issues these branches might cause. We want to think about them overlying on each other, causing rubbing in the wind, which will cause damage and potential entry for disease and damage and bacteria. And additionally, we want to think about low-hanging branches that when they are full of berries, they might just drop and touch the ground. So here I see a potential rubbing problem happening. There's these two branches coming from two larger separate branches on my tree. They're growing directly right into each other. I know that's going to be a problem as they get bigger, so I'm going to want to thin them out and see what I can do to prevent that. When I'm making this decision, I want to take that step back, take a look. Who's stronger, who's bigger, who's going to have more potential to hold more berries, and who's going to be threatening on other branches less. To me, I like the structure of this right branch a little more. It's thicker, it's bigger, it's got more strong branches, whereas this one's carrying a lot of tiny little wispies. So I'm going to favor the stronger, bigger branch and just remove this one that is going to cause potential rubbing against it. In that same line of thought, there are two branches growing inward here towards this big branch that I just favored. Because I don't like the direction they're going and I like the strength of this branch, I'm going to go ahead and clip those out of there to prevent any issues as well. This one leaves a little stump, so we're just going to take that one all the way back. As I'm taking a step back, I'm really appreciating the shape that I have going. I'm not seeing any more diseased, damaged wood. I'm not seeing any rubbing hazards or too low of lying branches. So I'm going to move on to the next and final step, which is to thin out your new growth and your old growth. However, this is my new blueberry plant. I only planted her last year. We're seeing only 4 or 5 stems of new growth, which is the amount that you want to keep. So we're not going to do much of this thinning on this plant because she's still young. All the branches are within producing age, and we want these new branches to continue growing, and we're going to hope for more next year. All right, so now we're going to move on to our mature model here. This pink lemonade has been in this container pot for quite a few number of years. You can see it's very happy and healthy. It's put off many new growth shoots. Don't expect your pink lemonades to stay this small. It actually got lopped last pruning season, which is why it's about half the size as it normally should be. But we're going to go ahead and zoom through the pruning on this one. Again, we're going to cut out the diseased, damaged wood. We're going to cut out the non-producing tiny little wisps, and we're going to cut out the low-lying branches that if they were to get out any berries on them, they would just touch the ground, as well as rubbing issues. Actually, cut off these burnt tips. Really, her plant is looking really good. There's not a whole lot for damaged or diseased issues that I'm seeing. Cut off non-producing branches. With these larger container plants, you kind of want to keep them manageable too, so don't be afraid to whack back any outliers to kind of in favor of gaining a favorable shape. So pruning mature plants is really about that 4th step. You want to thin down your number of branches. You want to kind of have a nice even number of year 1, 2, 3-year-old branches. Remember, after year 6, they start to lose productivity, so you want to get them out of here. If you forget how old a branch is, you can use a rule of thumb that if it's bigger than 1 inch, it's older than it needs to be and can get removed out of there. Well, you can see how removing this main stem really opens it up. You can see how it's really going to allow the light to penetrate these new growth branches, which is really going to allow it to explode with blueberries come growing season. So the next step we're really going to dive into is thinning this lady out. Ideally, we have an even number of about 4 or 5 different stems, canes from previous years, adding a nice mixture of between 1 to 6-year-old canes. This particular plant has maybe missed a few prunings, so we're really seeing a lot of the same year's growth on here. So we're going to thin that down, but maybe not as hard as we normally do because we want to see this new growth. Next year we might go a little harder, depending on what kind of new growth we see this year. These guys are too close together. Do a rubbing. I know pruning can feel scary, and it feels like, hey, I just cut off a lot of the main producing parts of this plant. However, you can cut up about 25% of this thing without seeing any bad effects. Additionally, you can cut up even more than that if you need to. If you're behind a few years on your pruning, don't be afraid to get in there and go to town. Mostly the only problem you're going to see is maybe a year's reduction of berries. Maybe you won't see any of the next year, but after that you're going to see bigger, more fruitful berries. It'll be worth it in the long run. If you've never pruned before, don't worry about getting in there. It's a plant. It'll grow back, it'll bounce back, and it'll be happier that you took the time and the effort to prune it back rather than leaving it alone, because it'll stop producing eventually. Alrighty, so the final type of blueberry I wanted to talk about today are these special type varieties, or also called half-high varieties. These are special bred type of blueberries, particularly for container stock. They can grow on your front porch in tiny containers, because these ones will stay below 3 feet tall. Because of their specialness and their tiny stature, they're going to be pruned a slightly different way. We're going to really focus on steps 1 through 3, where we're going to clean up the diseased, damaged wood. We're going to remove the non-producing branches, and we're going to get rid of the low-lying branches that might touch the ground, as well as any rubbing issues. That fourth step that we had about pruning out the different stages of growth of canes, we're going to kind of forget that with these guys. We're going to really focus on shape of canopy, and just because we want all the new growth that we can on these things, and we're not going to select to get rid of the older growth. So now that we've got the diseased and damaged wood out, we're going to go through and get rid of the low-lying and underproducing branches. And the final step with these half-high bushes is to kind of take a step back and think about how you want the overall canopy to be. With these, we kind of like to see a nice, small, round shrub shape, because they're so cute and they are meant to be in container stock on the porches. So we're going to go through and we're going to kind of cut outlying branches to kind of give it that nice round shape. I hope these 4 simple, easy steps have made you feel more confident to get out there and prune your blueberry bushes to help them get to producing more for you. Right now is a great time to be pruning your bushes as well as planting them. So go ahead and come into Chenard's, pick up your pink lemonade and your peach sorbet berries today.